here. So we formatted some things in currency, so they look reasonable. So now we have to figure out our formulas for calculating our material total, our labor total, our equipment and subcontractor total are just entered numbers because you'll get them from an equipment vendor or a subcontractor. And then we'll have to add these all together in a total cost column, if you'll follow me there. So we'll stick with this concrete line item here just because we have some data entered. So how do you figure we're going to calculate our material total here? Anyone? Yeah. Yeah, so you're going to multiply your quantity total cell. So every formula in Excel starts with an equals sign. So if I just click this, it moves the cell. So in the cell that I want to add the formula, I'm going to push equals, select quantity total, multiplication, which is above the 8 if you don't have a number pad, or it's the asterisk looking button above 9 if you have a number pad on your keyboard. That's multiplication in Excel. So I'm going to multiply my quantity total by my material unit price to figure out the material total. And that gives, so in this case here, that's $11,000 worth of material, which makes sense. 110 cubic yards times $100 a yard makes sense. So logic would say that labor total is calculated kind of in a similar fashion, right? Again, so I'll equals our quantity total multiplication our labor unit price, and because they're the same, so we'll make these so that they're not the same, just to make it clear here. So you can see, the 100 times 110 yards is our $11,000. So then to total these all up, again, my equals, right? Now, in some cases you can sum all the way across the row, but in this case here I have unit prices commingled with total prices, so we can't just use sum and select the whole row, so we have to add each one kind of individually. So I'm going to add my material total plus my labor total plus my subtotal and my equipment total. So for this 100 cubic or 110 cubic yards of concrete, it's going to be a total of $25,500. And then, just like I did before, if I select that cell with the formula in it and hover over the bottom right-hand corner of that cell, I can drag that up and then drag that this way here, and that will give me my that formula in all of these rows. Does that make sense? So we have that formula. Why is our other stuff not working, right? We still don't have total cost and everything for our temporary heat or temporary partitions. We need to do the same thing in those cells. So where we had our material total, I'm going to drag that down. I'm going to drag that up, that way. My labor total. And then again, these subcontractor and equipment are just entered numbers, so they don't get a formula. So now when I put in so let's see, temporary heat, we'll say that okay, so 100 days. Maybe we rent the temporary heat equipment. Maybe it's just a rental from a company and it's $500 a day, whatever the item is. And then our temporary partitions, maybe they are $5 a square feet in material, $4 in labor, $1 in equipment. So you can, maybe we have to paint those partitions. and maybe we're just going to subcontract that out, and we can get a painter to do it for $1 a square foot. So these the subtotal can't be $1 per unit unless you put a formula in there. So we could enter a number, $500. So we have all these numbers here, right, in this column that are totaling. So we have our total for this, our total for this, total. We need to add them all up at the bottom of the page, right? So if I go to my, down in this bottom right-hand corner here, I need to total all of what's above it. So you could sit here and equals this plus this plus this. But then every time you need to add an additional row or take away rows in your spreadsheet tabs, because you'll have right here, I only left us, a few rows for items. You're going to have many more rows than that when you actually put an estimate together. So to simplify your job later and have you have to enter less data or less formulas later on, we're going to use the sum function. So if I push the equals button and type the word sum, you can see it brings up a little formula thing down here, so you can some suggestions. Open a parenthesis, and I select that whole column, close my parenthesis. It gives me a total of that value. Yes. So alternatively, if you're not a typer, if you like button commands, you can go up into formulas, and there's a whole bunch of different formulas. So there's auto sum here, but there's also recently used, financial, logical, text, date, time, lookup, reference, math, trig, more functions. So you can go into math, and you could find sum in here. There's an auto sum button. They do the same thing. So if I click that, you can see it takes a guess at what you want. And you can hover over this shape on the corners and adjust it to make sure that it's encompassing the whole estimate. You can see we get the same dollar amount right here. Yes.
And so that would change if you added a new line item, or like how you said how you can expand with the other way. So this way, if you
this way here, if you expand, I'll show you. So if you're right down at the bottom here, right? Let's say I want to go in here and I insert. So if I right click right on this 15 and insert, and then I double click in this formula, see how it's missing that bottom cell? So you could drag that down, but what you really want to do before you run out of rows, if you say, all right, I'm getting a lot of items here, you could take and highlight multiple rows, right click, insert, and it adds it adds a bunch of rows. Or if you wanted to not have to worry about redoing the formulas within the cells, if you copy these, so you can right click and copy, or use the Control-C function, then again you can right click on the cell you want these to insert above, and you say insert copied cells. Now all of those formulas are already in there, and we've inserted 5 rows at once. You could do it. You could do 10 rows at once. And if I go into this over here, you can see how that auto sum picks up those numbers because I inserted it in the middle of that range. So it's smart enough to know that that's what I want.
Cool.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna save this. I haven't saved in a while. One thing you guys are gonna want to do is save early and often.
So when you insert, it always pushes, the new column goes on the top.
Yeah, usually inserts above. So how I inserted a whole row, or I copied and then pasted them. If you are in a cell, so let's say you're gonna have this issue. Some of you, when you try this for homework, you'll right click here and say insert, and it'll give you this option. So I'll say, I'll do it where there's text so you can see the difference here. So if I right click, insert, shift cells down, okay. See how it moves just that one, it doesn't add a whole row. So make sure when you're trying to insert rows or copy or paste, you're right clicking on the row numbers themselves so that you can see when I highlight it, it highlights that entire across the whole data plane. So you're not getting cells all jumbled up within your data. Yeah. Yeah, so let's say I wanted another column over here. I could right click and insert. Another column appears. Save. So I'll take this formula here, and I'm going to drag it across because I want the sum of my material. I don't need the sum of unit prices. Doesn't really, it's not really a good number. But your material total down here, your labor total, your subcontract total, your equipment total, and your total cost. Now all of those costs add up to each other, if that makes sense. Okay. So we'll